What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the episode of Inside Alliance, to a special episode as we discuss the fallout from what took place Sunday at Darlington for the Goodyear 400. A lot of storylines to talk about. Let's first talk about Ross Chastain and Kyle Larson. Obviously, William Byron won the race, but Larson and Chastain stole the headlines with this incident taking place late in the race. Chastain, Larson, two leaders making contact, both go into the wall. Chastain out of the race, Larson out of contention to win. Now, if you want to know my reactions to the race right as it happened, you can check out the video from last night where I recapped everything that took place in the race. Now I had a day to look back on it, and while my views haven't changed, I still feel like it was largely part on Chastain. I do have to make a bit of a correction. I stated in the interview, or at least in the video, that in his interview that he said sorry to, like, he didn't mean to do that. He did not say that. He just said, like, he didn't mean for himself to wreck. He wanted to push Larson up, but didn't mean to wreck himself. So that's what he said in the interview, and I just wanted to clarify that mistake. Now, the interesting thing about this whole thing is that we haven't heard anything from Kyle Larson. Larson stormed out. He did not give any interviews. He just, as soon as he got out of the car, walked right back to his hauler, clearly upset and didn't want to take any interviews. And while I was kind of surprised I didn't hear anything from Larson, I was very surprised to hear from the boss himself, Mr. Rick Hendrick, but it's more of what he actually said. Rick Hendrick sending a stern warning to Ross Chastain.
I think you can ask any driver in here that he's wrecked or been involved with him. He doesn't have to be that aggressive. And I guess at this point in the race, maybe you're super aggressive, but you just don't run people up in the fence, or he's going to make a lot of enemies. It's hard to win a championship when you got a lot of paybacks out there. And he's got so much talent. I think if he just calmed down, that there's a time in the race, Dale Earnhardt Sr. told me one time, he said, I won't name the driver who drove for me, but he said, he's got all the talent. He just doesn't know how to race. And meaning he just knows when to race, when to push it. He's got a lot of talent, but he's making a lot of enemies out here. And I mean, Kyle, now this one in Dover, and it's getting Talladega. It's really getting old with these guys. I don't care if he's driving a Chevrolet if he wrecks our cars. I don't care, and I've told Chevrolet that. If you wreck us, you're gonna get it back, and if you don't do it, they'll run all over you. So. I'm loyal to Chevrolet, but when somebody runs over us, then I expect my guys to hold their ground, and I'm not going to ask them to yield just because it's a Chevrolet.
Oof, those are some fiery words from Mr. H, and it reminds me, I walked back on some archive footage of the mid to late 80s, the rivalry between Dale Earnhardt and Geoff Bodine. Geoff Bodine was a driver for Rick Hendrick, and there was that one story that Geoff Bodine told that said that Rick Hendrick said that he was tired of Earnhardt wrecking his cars, and he will get someone that will do something about it if Geoff Bodine doesn't step up. So this isn't the first time, although it is very rare to see Rick, I don't want to say lash out, but be this forward as to how he feels about a certain driver. And he's not wrong. I mean, Chastain has made a lot of enemies. Let's see. He's got into it with Chastain, or with Truex. He's got into it with Elliott. He's got into it with Hamlin, although that seems to be civil now. Gregson, although that also seems to be civil. Now Larson. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm missing a lot more drivers. I'm pretty sure there are way more of the drivers Chastain has had a run-in with. But I mean, especially in this day and age where winning is everything and a point matters. Yes, we know what Chastain is willing to do. We saw the Martinsville wall ride, but the more enemies you create, the harder it's going to be to actually win or to actually beat these guys. I mean, think about it. This is probably the third time. I think Cliff Daniels said this was the third time now that Chastain has wrecked the 5 car, or has, made the 5 car get caught up in a wreck. hence Dover. So it's very justified, the feelings that Mr. H, Kyle Larson, the entire 5 team has against towards Ross Chastain. You know, Cliff Daniels bringing Chevrolet into the mix, I don't know. I don't think nothing's really is going to happen with that. Even though Hendrick is the #1 team for Chevrolet, Chevrolet ain't going to butt in. They're not going to do anything about it. But I do find it very interesting that the manufacturer was brought up in the conversation as would they step in to control Ross. And Hendrick hit the nail on the coffin. I mean, Chastain has a ton of talent, but he just doesn't know how to harness it, I feel like. And even to an extent that we look at, for example, when Kyle Busch first came into the Cup Series in the mid-2000s, in this first 2 or 3 seasons, he had a lot of talent but couldn't harness it. Chastain is like that, but way worse, in my opinion. I think Chastain has a ton of talent. We know that he can win, but the guy just does not know how to race drivers clean, in a sense, or at the very least dial it back a little bit. You know, it's like, hey, sometimes there's no need to push that issue, especially when it's lap 40 out of 400 or something like that. Although I do agree with the Darlington, although I do agree with happened that both drivers could have backed off a little bit. I feel like, you know, Larson maybe could have backed off, maybe could not have pushed Chastain so far down low. At the same time, Chastain did not need to push the issue. I mean, Chastain, in my opinion, had a faster car than Larson. Just Larson got ahead based on that pit stop strategy. But Chastain had a faster car, in my opinion. There was no need to push the issue. There was no need to try and force something that didn't need to be forced. So it'll be very interesting to see how Hendrick Motorsports, specifically Kyle Larson, approaches Ross Chastain in future races, because like I said earlier, this is now the 3rd time that the 5 car has been involved in a wreck due to Ross Chastain, either directly or indirectly. When is Larson going to step up? I know he's short, and I know that he says he's not a fighter, but at some point in time, you have to take matters into your own hands. Larson has been getting used up this year. I mean, I think I'm not the only one that can say that. Like, he's been getting used up, specifically by Ross. Now, Larson was also using up other drivers in previous years. I'm not going to deny that, you know, with Bubba, with Justin Haley, and Chase Elliott. I'm not saying that Larson is, you know, perfectly clean, that he didn't do anything wrong in the racetrack, but especially this year, Larson has been taking a lot of shots and haven't been taking any shots back. So I'm wondering, is this now the moment in time where Larson's like, okay, I'm done with you. Whatever happens from this point forward, you try to mess with me, you ain't making the next corner. I'm very interested in seeing how Larson deals with Ross and with other drivers in future races ahead. But remember, Larson, if you do something, just don't admit it, or else NASCAR will find your ass. And speaking of Ross Chastain, I do want to go in more depth with Ross, the character, the personality behind it, because there are a lot of people that are comparing Ross to Dale Earnhardt as the next Intimidator, or as, you know, as NASCAR's next superstar, as NASCAR needs to promote this guy to the moon. I disagree with that. Me personally, right now, I don't think Ross Chastain is the guy. Here's the thing. If people are going to make this comparison to Dale Earnhardt, while he was very controversial on the racetrack, he was very successful. 87, he won 11 races. In his 2nd season, he already won a Cup title. It's very hard to promote a guy that, even though Chastain is leading the point standings, Chastain hasn't won a race in more than a year. He last won at Talladega last year in the spring. You know, that's more than a year. You cannot be promoting guys that haven't won. And I understand Chastain is fairly new in good equipment. This is really in the 2nd year. Yes, he was at Chip Ganassi for a season, but that's not great equipment. That's okay. That's good equipment. These 2 years at Trackhouse are his first 2 years with great equipment in his entire career, probably, or at least in the Cup Series. So I know it's a very small track record for Chastain to go off of, for Chastain to say he needs to be successful, but it's true. He can be that personality. He can be that very aggressive driver, but he has to win in order for NASCAR to promote. You can have all these moments, create all this controversy, all this attention, but if you're not winning, I'm sorry, but people aren't just going to care. I mean, do you think Dale Earnhardt would receive so much publicity, so much hype worldwide if he was running 10th every race? No. You know, or if he was, you know, not winning races, not winning championships, absolutely not. The fact that Earnhardt was the way he was, and was winning so many races over the years, that those two things culminated together to create Dale Earnhardt, the man that we know. With Ross, He has the aggression that gets people talking. He has that driving style that can get people interested in a good or bad way. At the very least, people are invested, but he's not winning. If Chastain starts clicking off race wins and is in contention for titles and wins titles, you know, over the years, then we can make the discussion of Chastain being a superstar driver. Until that happens, ain't gonna happen. Another thing that Chastain needs to do, and again, this is something I talked about in my video yesterday, is that he needs to own it. He needs to accept that he is the villain. The issue with Chastain currently at the moment is that he's still trying to portray himself as a good guy. He's still trying to portray himself, you know, as just a hardworking guy trying to make it in NASCAR, which that is a great story, but your actions on the racetrack don't reflect your interviews thereafter. It's very aggravating as a fan in my view when I see a driver like Chastain do the things he do on the racetrack and yet then acts like the complete opposite off of the racetrack. But not like Logano. The difference with Logano, because I know some people are going to make that comparison, is that with Logano, yes, some people call him two-faced, where he's aggressive, will put you in the wall on the racetrack and yet is the nicest guy off the racetrack. If you listen to his interviews, whenever he is involved in those types of confrontations, he doesn't necessarily back off from it. Yes, you know, he will use the phrase of, oh, that's just racing, you know, things like that. He doesn't really back down from his actions. You never really see that from Logano. And that is something you can at least say to Logano that kind of plays into that villain role. That's the issue with Chastain. He apologizes too much. He didn't apologize in his Darlington interview, but way too much do we get this apologetic, you know, type of interview from Ross, where at this point in time, when you do it 5, 6, 7 times, it's getting old and it's just not believable at this point in time. If I'm Ross, the best thing I would do is just play up to it. Be like, yeah, I'm reckless, or I shouldn't say reckless, that's a bit harsh, but I can be reckless. I'll be very aggressive. You know, I am unpredictable. That's just what's going to happen when you're around me. Something to that nature to just set the standard of, listen, this is what's going to happen when you race around me. This is what could happen. If you like it, great. If you don't, sorry. Play into that villain role, because I'm sorry, but it's impossible to be a good guy now. When you have this many enemies, not only from drivers, but also from fans, even though there's a lot of fans that love Ross, there's also a lot of fans that don't like Ross. So when you're a very controversial character, it's very difficult to portray yourself as a good guy or to try to be an apologetic type of guy in your interviews when you do something egregious or, quite bluntly, stupid on the racetrack. And Chastain has done a lot of stupid things. He's done a lot of great things, but also done a lot of stupid things. So that is why I'm not on the Ross Chastain superstar train yet. Now, 2 things. He's got to win and he's got to accept the role. If he does those 2 things, then he has the potential to be NASCAR's biggest superstar, bigger than Chase Elliott, and even be one of the few names that can break through NASCAR and maybe be a part of pop culture. We know it's possible when he did it with the wall ride, but now it's got to be this thing where it's more of a brand and not just a moment. Because that's right now Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain is a moment. What happened in the wall ride, that was a moment. Great, but nothing really has happened outside of that, or at the very least, nothing has happened that follows that. Yes, he finished second in the championship the following week at Phoenix, but outside of that, all he's done is been involved in controversy, and none of it involves winning. Yes, it's close to a win, and none of it involves him in victory lane. It's always him getting close to a win and then does something to screw it up. I know it may seem like I'm bashing Chastain, that I hate Chastain, and that's not the case. I'm not a Chastain hater. I know it may seem like that, but I'm not a Chastain hater. I want Chastain to succeed. I love his story about a watermelon farmer being a NASCAR winner, potential NASCAR champion. I love the story, and I want Chastain to be a superstar, but how he's going is completely wrong. However, if he makes some adjustments, he can use that controversy or use the backlash he's receiving from drivers to his advantage as a part of his brand. Because Ross Chastain, with how he is on the racetrack, if he can play up to that and accept that role, he can be, I guarantee you this, he can be a superstar. Maybe not take home the most popular driver, but surely could be the most recognizable driver in NASCAR. Possibly, as long as he makes some of those adjustments. He's got to win and he's got to accept the role. He's not. He can't be a good guy, Ross. I'm sorry. You're not the good guy anymore. The way you race on the racetrack, you are a villain. You're a bad guy. If you accept that, you can make some magic with that. Yeah, what are your thoughts on any of my 2 thoughts on the 2 stories I talked about? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, my name is Jett from MDK. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.